That mistake you made last week, the one replaying in your head right now, nobody else remembers it. Not because they don't care about you, because they never noticed it in the first place. Psychologists have a name for this blind spot, the spotlight effect. In one study, people guessed half a room would remember an embarrassing outfit. The real number was closer to 1 in 4, and most forgot within the hour. You've been performing for an audience that packed up and left long ago. Even Marcus Aurelius, the most watched man in Rome, had to remind himself of this daily. Let's talk about the camera that was never actually on, the camera that was never there. You walk out of a meeting convinced everyone noticed your voice shake. You leave a party, replaying the joke that didn't land. You lie awake, certain that one typo in an email is all anyone remembers about you. There's an invisible camera running in your head, recording every flaw, broadcasting it to an audience that, as far as you're concerned, never looks away. Here's the problem. That camera doesn't exist. It never did. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, the tendency to believe others notice us far more than they actually do. In a well-documented study, researchers had a student wear a shirt, embarrassing enough to make anyone cringe, then walk into a room full of strangers. The student guessed nearly half the room would remember it. The real number was closer to 1 in 4, and most of those forgot within the hour. You are not on camera. You're standing in an empty studio, performing for a crew that packed up and left long ago. I once knew a man who turned down a promotion because he was convinced his co-workers still talked about a presentation he'd botched 2 years earlier. 2 years. He carried that moment like a scar on his forehead. When he finally asked a colleague about it, the answer stunned him. Nobody remembered it happened. Not one person. He had spent 2 years protecting a wound that existed only in his own memory. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most scrutinized man in the Roman world, wrote to himself that most of what troubles a man is not the event itself, but the opinion he holds about it. The event ends. The imagined audience does not, unless you dismiss it yourself. Somewhere behind your eyes, there's a camera you built out of fear. Nobody else is holding it. Nobody else ever was. The audience you're afraid of exists in exactly one place inside your own head. Why your brain lies about being watched. If the spotlight effect is a lie, why does it feel so real? Because your brain wasn't built for comfort. It was built for survival. For most of human history, being noticed by the tribe wasn't optional. It was the difference between protection and abandonment. A person cast out of the group in ancient times didn't just feel embarrassed. They often didn't survive the winter. So the brain developed an early warning system. Constantly scan for how you're perceived, because your life may depend on it. That system never got the memo that the stakes changed. Today, a co-worker's raised eyebrow doesn't threaten your survival, but your nervous system still reacts as if it might. This is why a single unanswered text can spiral into an entire imagined story about being disliked. Not because the evidence supports it, but because an ancient alarm is going off for a threat that no longer exists. I remember a colleague who once sent a message to a client that got a delayed response. Within an hour, she had built an entire narrative. The client was angry, the deal was falling apart, her job was at risk. She barely slept that night. The next morning, the client replied he'd simply been in back-to-back meetings. No anger, no crisis, just silence, filled entirely by her own mind. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed, not by events, but by the judgments we attach to them. The delayed reply was neutral. The disaster was manufactured entirely in her head. Your brain isn't lying to hurt you. It's lying because it thinks it's protecting you, using tools built for a world that no longer exists. Recognizing that the alarm is outdated is the first step to no longer obeying it. Your brain isn't watching reality. It's replaying an ancient alarm that forgot the war ended. Everyone is starring in their own film. Here's the detail that breaks the spell completely. While you worry about being watched, everyone around you is doing the exact same thing about themselves. The coworker you think is judging your outfit is busy wondering if her own presentation went well. The stranger you think noticed your stumble on the sidewalk is thinking about the email he forgot to send. Nobody has spare attention left over to fully study you because they're all the lead actor in their own film, and you're a background extra in it, just as they are in yours. This isn't cynical, it's freeing. I think of a young teacher who spent her first year terrified that students were silently mocking every mistake she made at the whiteboard. She'd lie awake, replaying small stumbles, a wrong date, a mispronounced word. Years later, she asked a former student what he remembered about her class. He mentioned one thing, a joke she made about pizza. He didn't remember a single one of the mistakes she'd tortured herself over. He'd been too busy worrying about his own grades to notice. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is that clearer than in the audience we invent for ourselves, an audience mostly preoccupied with their own performance to bother reviewing yours. This doesn't mean nobody ever notices you. It means the intensity of their attention is a fraction of what your fear tells you. Most people are too consumed managing their own spotlight to spend real energy studying yours. Once you understand that everyone is the main character of their own story, you stop needing to be the villain or the hero of theirs. Nobody is watching your film closely enough to remember the scene you can't stop replaying. The cost of performing for an empty room. Living as if you're always being watched has a price, and it's not small. It's your actual life, spent rehearsing instead of living. Think about how much energy goes into managing an imaginary audience, choosing words carefully, not because they're true, but because they sound impressive. Avoiding a hobby because it might look silly to someone who was never paying attention in the first place. Softening an opinion because a stranger on the internet might disagree. This is a full-time job with no pay and no audience actually clocking in to watch the performance. I knew a man who wanted to start painting in his 40s. He never touched a brush. Not because he lacked time or money, but because he imagined family members raising eyebrows at a middle-aged man taking up a hobby for kids. He built an entire courtroom in his head, complete with judges, before a single one of them ever said a word. When he finally mentioned the idea out loud, at dinner, nobody laughed. His daughter asked if she could join him. The courtroom had been empty the entire time. He was both defendant and jury, trying himself for a crime nobody else had noticed. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that very little is actually needed for a person to live a peaceful life, mostly freedom from the good opinion of others. Not because opinions don't matter at all, but because most of the opinions we fear were never actually forming in anyone else's head. Every hour spent performing for imagined critics is an hour stolen from the life you were actually trying to live. You can spend a lifetime performing for a jury that never showed up to the trial. What real attention actually looks like. If the spotlight effect is mostly imaginary, does that mean nobody ever really watches you? No, it means real attention is rarer, briefer, and far less judgmental than you assume. Social validation research shows something specific. People do care what others think, but their focus is short, shallow, and self-interested. A stranger might notice your outfit for 3 seconds and move on entirely. A co-worker might register your mistake and forget it by lunch because they have their own mistakes to manage. Real attention is a passing glance, not a permanent verdict. I remember a comedian who bombed on stage early in his career, dead silence for an entire 5-minute set. He assumed his career was over, that the story would follow him. Years later, doing research for a documentary about that same club, he found the original footage. In the corner of the frame, half the audience was on their phones. They weren't even watching the failure he'd spent years grieving. This is the gap between what you fear and what actually happens. You imagine a courtroom. Reality delivers a glance, and often not even that. Seneca advised that we ought to withdraw into ourselves as much as we can, because the constant company of an imagined jury exhausts a person for no real reward. He wasn't suggesting isolation, he was suggesting proportion. Give real relationships real weight. Give the passing judgments of strangers the weight they deserve. Almost none. Once you understand what attention actually looks like, brief, forgettable, self-absorbed, the fear of being watched loses its grip entirely. Real attention is a glance. The verdict you're afraid of was never delivered. Freedom is not being invisible, it's being undivided. Letting go of the spotlight effect doesn't mean you stop caring what happens around you. It means you stop splitting yourself in two, the person doing the thing and the person watching himself do it. Epictetus taught a sharp distinction. Some things are within your control, some are not. Your effort, your honesty, your choices, yours. Whether an imagined crowd approves, never yours, and never real to begin with. The moment you accept this, a strange calm arrives. You're no longer managing two performances at once. I think of an athlete who spent years playing, distracted by an internal narrator, worrying mid-game about how a missed shot looked to the crowd. His coach gave him one instruction that changed everything. Play the game, not the audience. Stop narrating your own highlight reel while you're still in the middle of the play. His performance improved almost immediately, not because the crowd's opinion of him changed, but because he stopped dividing his attention between the game and an imaginary broadcast of himself playing it. This is what freedom from the spotlight effect actually gives you. Not invisibility, but wholeness. You get to be one person again, instead of a performer and a critic sharing the same body. Marcus Aurelius described the ideal as a mind undisturbed, focused entirely on the task in front of it, rather than fractured by imagined observers. That undivided attention is not coldness. It's presence, the very thing an imaginary audience steals from you every single day. You don't need to disappear from the crowd. You need to stop watching yourself from inside it, living like the camera was never on. Imagine, for one day, that nobody is watching. Not because you're invisible, but because it happens to be true more often than you think. What would you say without editing it 3 times first? What would you wear without checking if it makes sense? What would you try, publicly, without building an imaginary courtroom around it first? This isn't a call to stop caring about others. It's a call to stop performing for people who were never in the audience to begin with. I think of an elderly craftsman I once heard about who took up violin at 70, badly, loudly, in a small apartment with thin walls. Neighbors could hear every mistake. When asked if it embarrassed him, he said something simple. Most people who heard it forgot within the hour, and the ones who didn't forget were too busy with their own lives to care as much as he feared. He wasn't naive about being heard. He'd simply done the math correctly. The audience in his head was larger and crueler than the one in real life. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private reflections at night, for no one, in a role that made him the single most watched man of his era. If even an emperor could learn to live from the inside out, ignoring an audience that never stopped watching him, the rest of us have far less to fear. The spotlight was never on. It was a lamp you carried yourself, shining it on your own flaws so brightly that you forgot to look up and see that the room, mostly, was dark. Put the lamp down. Walk into the room as you actually are. The spotlight was never real. The only person who never looked away was you.